Hello and welcome to the Cade and Eric Show here, episode 12. 12 of them. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience. Thank you to everybody who follows, everybody who listens. Again, I have a Facebook page, the Cade and Eric Show on Facebook, and also Twitter and Truth Social. The Cade and Eric Show on both of those, Twitter and True Social. Still in the works of doing I do have a Twitter account. I believe it's the Cade and Eric Show or Cade and Eric Show, one of the two. So I've been posting a couple of those videos. So if you want to go in there and see some nice, I've just done some pictures for right now. Still in the works of trying to get the my idea of wanting to do some funny little short videos on there. So once those are up, I will let everybody know. But I'm pretty excited. I think it's pretty funny. It's just been pretty busy and pretty hectic here. So I will get those up as soon as I can. But again, thank you to everybody who listens. Happy 4th of July yesterday. Hopefully everybody had a great 4th of July. We did. We spent some time swimming and just did some barbecue, and then we went and saw some great fireworks. It's kind of funny. I was sitting there listening to or watching you don't listen to fireworks, but I was watching the fireworks and I was sitting there trying to think of something profound to say today as I was watching them, trying to feel like, all right, I got to say something profound tomorrow. I'm going to record after this. This is going to be great. It's going to be a pro-American. And honestly, I just couldn't think of anything. It was just great to sit there and watch the fireworks. I guess one good thing is that there were a lot of kids, and but there's a big difference in the parades and the fireworks displays that have happened with Pro America. On the flip side, the Pride stuff, everybody had their clothes on. There was no naked people at the fireworks display that I went to. I haven't read anything in the news about naked people, so that's one good thing is we don't have any naked people at our pro-American rallies and fireworks displays where Pride seems to do that all the time. I'm not sure why. So that was one thing, I guess. It was great to see kids around with pro-America shirts, waving the sparklers around, the flags, and sitting there watching the fireworks go off. It was great. So hopefully you had a great 4th of July. You have to celebrate it with friends or family or whomever. One cool thing that the neighborhoods around where I live does every almost every major or pretty all the major days, holidays that flags would go out, like Flag Day, obviously Veterans Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July is pretty obvious they would have flags out. But all the neighborhoods around where I live, they put out these, I don't know if it's the HOAs or if it's the cities. I wouldn't think it was the cities, but I would guess it's the HOAs. But they put out like dozens and dozens of flags all around the entrances to the different neighborhoods. And it's just great to see, dozens of these American flags flying around. So it's just amazing to see that, to see the pride that there is still people that take pride in the United States of America, and it's just great to see that. So this one, there's going to be no. This episode, there's going to be no Biden. There's going to be no current events. I want to talk about the Declaration of Independence, why we have it, what made it so important, and what the founders did that brought them to the point of declaring a declaration from England. There have been a lot of great things that have happened here recently, a lot of Supreme Court rulings that have been great. So I will talk about those next week with the affirmative action and the standing for religious freedom, and then also, there's some other ones that I will go into next time. This time I just want to talk about the Declaration, the whole reason that we are America. So the question is, why do we have the Declaration? Did Thomas Jefferson just decide one day and be like, "Hey, we're going to declare our independence from England"? And just wake up and be like, hey, this is what we're going to do? The answer to that is no, he did not. There's a book that I was given. It is called Lives of the Signers of the Declaration of Independence. It's really great. It's a reprint of an 1848 original. And so it goes over the lives. It has the Declaration, the Constitution, Bill of Rights in it. It's a great book that I've been currently reading here. And so I'd like to go over different sections of this because I think it's profound what the author of the book has to say as to these great men, why we have the Declaration. So some of the stuff here that he says here is. From no point of view can the Declaration of Independence, the causes which led to its adoption, and the events which marked its maintenance be observed without exciting sentiments of profound veneration for the men who were the proponent actors in that remarkable scene in the drama of the world's history, properly to appreciate the true revelation position in which those men stood to the then past and future, it is necessary to view the chain of causes and effects, retrospective and prospective, united in them in a brilliant link. For a long series of years, the commercial policy of Great Britain in her dealings with the American colonies was narrow and selfish, and its effects influenced the whole social compact here. The colonists felt the injustices of many laws, but their want for representation in the national legislature and their inherent political weakness obligated them to submit. But when the wars with the French and Indians called forth their physical energies and united in a measure of disjointed settlements scattered in isolated communities along the Atlantic seaboard, marked by hardly a semblance of union in feelings and interest, it was then that they perceived the strength of unity and talked with each other, respecting their common rights and privileges. So, in other words, they were, England had just fought the war, the French and Indian War, and the colonists were kind of expected to fit the bill for that. They were upset about it. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. What they wanted was to have representation and a voice in the laws that were being enacted upon them. And the British Crown and Parliament they didn't want to have anything to do with them. They thought, hey, these guys are just a form of income. They don't, they can whine and complain all they want, but we're not going to listen to them. So Parliament and the Crown decided to enact laws. The famous law that was enacted was the enactment of the Stamp Act in 1765, and this goes on to further say, and the kindred measures that soon followed made it plain to the minds of the colonists that even common justice would be denied them by the home government. So in other words, they weren't going to listen. England wasn't going to listen to the colonists. They saw plainly that the king and parliament were resolved to turn a deaf ear to all petitions and that were based upon the righteous assumption that taxation and equitable representations are one and inseparable, and that the king didn't want to do that. He didn't care. So what the colonists decided to do, the time and place for holding a Congress was designated, and on the 5th of September 1774, delegates from the various colonies assembled in Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia. These deliberations were orderly but firm. Loyalty to the crown, notwithstanding its oppressions, was a leading theme in their debates. Not a word was whispered of dismemberment or independence, but they solemnly constituted with each other upon the best means of maintaining the integrity of the British realm, compatible with the preservation of their own inalienable rights. To this end, their efforts were directed, and they humbly petitioned to the king with Parliament and appealed to their brethren in Great Britain for justice. But their petitions were in vain. New oppressions were laid upon them, and the blood of American citizens was shed by British soldiery at Lexington and Concord. And I'm sure, hopefully, everybody's heard of Lexington and Concord, the battles that basically kind of started the whole revolution. But what that was all about, and it might sound similar of what the British were trying to do to the colonists, is what they're trying to do to us today, actually, is it was so Concord and Lexington are cities outside of Boston. And so the context of this is that Thomas Gage was appointed royal governor of Massachusetts in about 1774 and tasked by the British Parliament with stamping out rising unrest caused by restricted British policies. Gage inflamed the tensions between the colonists and the mother country and practiced harsh enforcement of British law. He drafted the Covert Acts, a series of laws intended to punish the colonists for deeds of defiance against the king, such as the Boston Tea Party. Hopefully everybody knows what the Boston Tea Party is that the colonists got all dressed up. They had some cultural appropriation there. They dressed as Indians. That's not supposed to happen. They're not supposed to dress as Indians. That's just not. That's what the liberals today would say. Anyway, so yeah, the Boston Tea Party. They threw all the tea into the Boston Harbor because they didn't want to pay the taxes on it. Man, I mean, they had with the taxes and nonsense we have today, holy crap, what are we doing? I mean, seriously. Anyway, here, so then it further goes on to say, by April of 1775, Gage was facing the threat of outright rebellion. He hoped to prevent violence by ordering the seizure of weapons and powder being stored in Concord, Massachusetts. But he underestimated the courage and determination of the colonists. Patriot spies got wind of Gage's plan, and on the evening of April 18th, Paul Revere, the British are coming, and other writers raised the alarm that British regulars were on their way to Concord. Minutemen and militias rushed to confront them early in April 19th. And then it says who goes on. So there's a bloody battle. So that's what that's kind of what started. Is the British knew there were weapons and ammunition in Concord and Lexington, and they went to go take their arms. They went to go take and subjugate them, so they wouldn't have their their weapons, their ammunition. Now, does that sound familiar today? I think so. The same people, like the British, who wanted to take away the colonists' guns, are here today wanting to take away our guns and ammunition, so we do not have the ability to defend ourselves. So that's what conquered. So that's what happened. So then another Congress assembled in May of 1775, organized a temporary general government, made provisions for an army, and appointed George Washington, the father of our country, commander-in-chief. And yet they talked not of independence. Even after all this crap that they have went through, they're still wanting to be loyal. They still wanted to be British citizens. They still just wanted their basic God-given rights that the king and parliament did not want to give them. Thank goodness he didn't, because we wouldn't be here if he had not done that. So, okay. And they armed in defiance of rights bestowed by the British Constitution, and they were still willing to lay them down and avow their loyalty when those rights should be respected, even with arms in their hands, successfully opposing the force of British bayonets. They petitioned and remonstrated, but their petitions were unheeded, and their demands for justice were met by swarms of armed mercenaries purchased by the British government for petty German princes, and sent hither to butcher British subjects for asserting the rights of British subjects. That's all they wanted. That's all they wanted. They just wanted to be counted as equals as to the British subjects in England. That's all they wanted. They loved their country. They loved the fact that they were English and that they were British. They didn't want to have a revolution, or they didn't want to have a war with England. But once again, the government thought they were too big for the people, so they decided not to, listen to what they had to say. It further goes on. Hope of reconciliation faded away at the opening of 1776, famous year. And in June of that year, goodness gracious, Richard Henry Lee of Virginia offered a resolution in the General Congress declaring all allegiances of the colonies to the British Crown to an end. This bold proposition was soon after followed by the appointment of a committee to draft a Declaration of Independence. This committee consisted of Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert R. Livingston. The draft was made by Jefferson, who, wrote the Declaration of Independence. And after a few verbal alterations by Dr. Franklin and Mr. Adams, it was submitted to Congress on the 28th of June. It was laid upon the table until the 1st of July when it was taken up in Committee of the Whole. And after several amendments were made, 9 states voted for independence. The assemblies of Maryland and Pennsylvania refused their concurrence. But conventions of the people having been called, majorities were obtained, and on the 4th of July, votes from all the colonies were procured in its favor, and the 13 united colonies were declared free and independent states. How amazing. I mean, just absolutely amazing. These men were truly, truly amazing men. To go up and say, hey, we're going to go up against the biggest, strongest guy on the block, basically, and tell him we're done with you, get out of our face, and we're just done. Because at that point, the British were they were the greatest superpower at that point. And the signing of that instrument was a solemn act and required great firmness and patriotism in those who committed it. It was treasonous against the home government, yet perfect allegiance to the law of right. It subjected those who signed it to the danger of an ambiguous death, yet it entitled them to the profound reverence of the disrobed people. But neither firmness nor patriotism was wanting in that august assembly, and their own sound judgment and discretion, their own purity of purpose and integrity of conduct were forfeited and strengthened by the voice of the people and popular assemblies embodied in written instructions for the guidance of their representatives. So, if they had lost the war, like the movie, the first one anyway, not Night at the Museum, National Treasure, good golly. Nicolas Cage's character says to the lady, and then the other guy, he's like, if they had been, if these men if they had lost the war, every single one of them that had signed the Declaration of Independence would have been brutally killed because it was treasonous to what they were doing. Just incredible. I mean, I love the HBO show John Adams. After they have all talked, and it looks like it's late. And they all vote on it. They all sit there and stare at it, looking around the room, looking around, I guess, Independence Hall, and just looking at, they were all looking at each other, knowing, all right, this is, we did this. There was no cheering, there was no fireworks, there was no loud clapping or laughter, or, there certainly weren't any hot dogs or hamburgers to be eaten later. They were all very solemn. They were all very calm and collected, and were, because they had just done treason in the eyes of the British government, and it's just incredible that these men had that such faith that what they were doing was right for them, not only for themselves but for all the rest of us that have come after them. It's just truly incredible that they all came together. There was only about 3 million people in the total, I believe the total continent, or, the total colonies was about 3 million. I mean, I think here in the DFW area, we've got, like 5 or 6 just in this little area. In the whole colonies, there was about 3. And to have those men just from that small portion of people It's just incredible. They were truly put here at that time to form the country that we live in, and to spread the word of freedom to, around the world. I mean, how many other countries have tried to replicate what we have done? I didn't look this up, but I just wonder, I mean, the French Revolution came after us. It was a little bit different. They didn't really, there was lots of beheadings and death and destruction. And I think some of the leaders that started it ended up being beheaded too, as well, from what I remember from history. But I mean, it's just they have paved the way for freedom around the world to millions. Just truly inspiring. Just amazing. One little last section here from this book. So apparently there was a nice little fun story here that Congress was assembled in Independence Hall in Philadelphia when the Declaration was adopted. And connected with that event, the following touching incident is related. On the morning of the day of its adoption, the venerable bellman ascended to the steeple, and with a little boy and a little boy was placed at the door of the hall to give him notice when the vote should be concluded. The old man waited long at his post, saying, "They will never do it." I can just imagine him. Can you imagine him just sitting there with everything that's happened? Just this old man just saying, "They aren't going to do it. They aren't going to do it." Suddenly, a loud shout came from far below, and there stood the blue-eyed boy, clapping his hands and shouting, "Ring, ring!" Grasping the iron tongue of the bell backward and forward, he hurled it 100 times, proclaiming liberty to the land and the inhabitants thereof. I mean, how amazing, how awesome is that? He got to sit there and ring that bell, declaring freedom to the country and freedom to the inhabitants then and for all of us that have come afterwards. So I thought it was just a great book, so I definitely would recommend it. So I thought it would be appropriate to go over a little bit of the Declaration. I did that in a previous episode here, but the line here that is probably the most famous that Joe Biden can't seem to get together and can't say it right, is that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So then I thought it was appropriate to go over some of the offenses that good old King George did to the people, to see if there was some similarities in what had happened to them to what is happening today. The first part of that here is all just stuff it's not happening to us. Although the first thing that Thomas Jefferson writes, though, is speaking of the king, is that he has refused to assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. That's for sure happened today. One of the other thing is that he has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. Now, how that applies today, look at what... let's do the second one here, then we'll talk about that. He has erected a multitude of new offices. 87,000 IRS agents, ring a bell, and sent hither to swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. Is that not what's happening with what is going on? That the president has used the DOJ, the FBI, as his judges, dependent on his will alone. And the hiring of 87,000 new IRS agents to go and check on the American people as if they have, as if they've committed these awful atrocities against this government. Then it goes on and on and on, listing, I don't know how many, there's 20 or more. One of the things he says there is that, see if this doesn't ring a bell for today. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, destruction, and tyranny already begun with the circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled, excuse me, I smudged the writing here, in the most oh my goodness sakes, barbarous ages and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. Now, does that sound familiar? We have millions and millions of illegal people just coming across our border. We have no idea who they are. We have the drugs that are coming across our border, and the Biden administration is fully just the border secure. The border secure. It's fine. It's good. Granted, they are not your traditional armies with their own uniforms or countries, but they do come from other countries and come across and just do death and destruction and tyranny in this nation. He has another thing that Thomas Jefferson writes that sounds very familiar today. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers. The merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguishable destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. Now, we don't have merciless Indian savages, as he writes here, but we do have, like I said, the illegals that are going among us. We've got, we had this summer 3 years ago of mostly peaceful protests, right? They were, the Democrats and others were telling people to go out to the streets and cause death and destruction. And then now have later on decided, oh, no, we didn't do that. That was mostly peaceful protests. So some of it's very similar. Some of it is very, very similar to what the King of England did to the colonists, to what is going on today. So we need to pay attention. Like I've said before, we need to draw the line in the sand. One of my most one of my most favorite places to go. And I didn't, I knew about the Alamo before, obviously, you learn about it in history, but I did not fully appreciate it until I actually went there. When I was living in Houston, is that we went there and I got to experience it fully and just fully understand, just the magnitude of what happened there at the Alamo. The famous line, the line drawn in the sand comes from the Alamo, and the Texans there, they drew the line in the sand and said, this is where we're going to stand here. We're not going to retreat. And, everybody in the Alamo died. The great Davy Crockett, and many, many, many others. They died there in the Alamo because they stood up for what they believed in and what was right. So we need to stand up for what we believe in, because if we don't, then we'll lose everything that all of these great people, all of these great men and women before us fought so hard to claim. Fought so hard to preserve freedom. And at the end of the declaration here it says, and for the support of this declaration with our firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. So in other words, God. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And then the 56 men signed it. So we just have to remember their sacrifice, because they gave everything for the cause of freedom. And hopefully we are willing to give the same, because it has now been given to us. It is our stewardship. It has been entrusted to us to keep the fires of freedom burning. So hopefully you've had a wonderful 4th of July, and I will talk with you next week, and we'll get into the big stuff that came down from the Supreme Court, the great stuff that came down from the Supreme Court. So with that, hopefully you have a great week. And please follow on Twitter, True Social, and the Facebook page. The Caden Eric Show on Facebook, Caden Eric Show on Twitter, and also I'm on TikTok, and I've done a few. And like I said, I'll get those up here in a little while. Hopefully hopefully this week sometime. Hopefully it'll be funny for you. So yeah, please follow, like, share with your friends, positive ratings, and have a good week. See you later.